Welcome to the Mentor Lab, a space where we talk honestly about what it means to show up for young people who have experienced trauma, foster care, or instability. Each episode, we sit down with youth, mentors, professionals to explore real stories, hard topics, and the moments that remind us why mentorship matters. I'm your host, Natalie Lawrence, and today we have Stephanie Becker with us, a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist, and we will be talking through trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy and EMDR. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing with us all of your wisdom and expertise. Why don't you start by sharing your bio? Tell us a little bit about who you are and your connection with Teen Leadership Foundation.
Great. Well, first, thank you for having me. So I am Stephanie Becker, a licensed clinical social worker. I am currently in private practice in Oregon, and I see clients via telehealth in California. And I'm also spearheading the Gorge Family Counseling Program that's out here as a mental health director. But my career started in California, I was going to say Oregon. I'm relatively new to Oregon, but my career actually started based on my own personal experience, because we were foster adopt parents back in 2001. Our girls joined us at the ages of 6, 8, and 9, and at the time our son was 7, and so through that lived experience of just understanding trauma-impacted youth and their needs, and some of the adverse challenges that we had with the girls joining us, and just becoming one family unit, we really had to seek a lot of support ourselves. So at the time, we found support through Kinship Center. Kinship Center was I learned through bridge builders, a lot of parenting aspects. And so through my own personal experience, and through that, I actually became a parent partner and started working with the first wraparound teams in Orange County that worked on stabilizing youth that were in transition and placements. So that was a really great experience. It led to me for my own furthering my own education and becoming a therapist, a parent educator, working with trauma-impacted youth and families, really understanding the dynamics that needed to be involved and creating that support and stability. And that also led to me working with Teen Leadership Foundation with Lisa Kessler, the first residential community that she had in Costa Mesa. I was able to go out and work with some of the residents there and provide support through that process as well. And so it's really that brought us together through that path. And now I'm here out in Oregon. I kind of ventured out this way and continue on. My kids that joined us at 6, 8, and 9, we adopted in 2003. We finalized, and I won't age myself, but my kiddos are now 30 plus. And so we've actually built our world, grandkids, everything. So, but here I am out here working with in Oregon. So.
That's amazing. So you are familiar with this set of people from professionally and personally. That's so cool.
Yes. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And in a little bit of a parallel process, coming into work as a parent partner was kind of, I'm going to say, a paraprofessional role. It was based off of my own experience. So a lot of times mentors bring in a lot of either their own experience or their desire to support. And so kind of that parallel portion of where I started in my own career is kind of is very supportive of the mentoring role as well.
I love that. And you probably can have a perspective of really knowing what a mentor can know and might be helpful for them to know. So let's jump in. So let's start by kind of defining some terms. So trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy. Can you just kind of describe that and explain that from in a perspective that a mentor could understand?
Yeah, so TF-CBT is one of the modalities that we would use to process trauma. And it's very effective. It's very effective with youth, younger youth, and all the way up through adulthood. But the biggest part of it is that you're exploring their trauma narrative, but we're bringing truths into it. So we do a lot of cognitive restructuring or understanding ahead of time, and skill-based learning so that they can understand their emotions a little bit better and understand the truths about what's some of the traumas that instead of the negative cognitions or emotions that they might have created as a result of the traumas. And the big piece with TF-CBT is we can explore their journey through if it's drawings or if it's an actual written story, but we're sharing that story with the parent or the caregiver in a way that the parent or caregiver can hold that space. So we're doing a little bit of psychoeducation with the parents as well. So it's really kind of very supportive and helping to build resiliency and understanding of the traumas for the children, for youth. So that's a big one.
Okay, so it's really like you said, you use the word trauma narrative. So it's kind of understanding a story and a narrative that, right. Okay. And where does EMDR therapy play into that? And what is EMDR?
So EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That's a little bit different in that what you're doing is using bilateral stimulation, either through eye movement or sometimes it can be through just pulsars that we use, light bars. But what that's doing is actually decreasing the nervous system so that they can actually internalize and walk through it. There are some prompts, there's different phases of EMDR, but they work through the actual trauma in a place where they're not reactive. They're able to actually go through that trauma and experience some of the emotions that they carried about through that. And then it actually reframes it. And it's almost like the brain healing itself. It's really interesting. There's always like a shift with EMDR. So it's a little different processing. And one good way to think about this is TF-CBT is kind of, we consider that top down, like from our brain, like the logical portion down through the nervous system and maybe reprinting positive messages about themselves. And EMDR is going to be a bottom-up type thing. We're working through the nervous system and we're actually working so that they can logically understand it a little bit differently. So two different modalities for trauma, but super, super effective in actually processing just the experiences or the emotions that they hold surrounding that. Yeah.
And that's a therapist's job. That's not a mentor's job.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting to think about. We all carry roles, and everybody's roles are so important. But these are things that you really have to have training and you have to be certified in it. You have to learn. It's like, then you have to have guidance with it. So yes, it's actually, these are really evidence-based practices, modalities that you should have the education to understand how to do those. And it's not something I think for mentors, it's kind of like, it's kind of a weight lifted. Like you don't have to be the therapist. It's a good thing, right? Somebody else can hold that role, right?
Yeah. Amen. Okay. So then let's look at the perspective of the mentor now. So how does trauma typically kind of show up in a transitional age youth who's experienced foster care?
So that's a really good question. So let's back up for a second. Trauma is a perceived threat of safety, right? It can be emotional safety, it can be physical safety. And when I say perceived, that does not mean that it was not real. It's just how that individual interprets what's going on in their world. So that does not mean that there has not been an actual trauma. It's just that, again, the how they perceive it and the messages that they hold about it. So how it shows up significantly, number one, in things that we would find in standard elements of safety, emotional safety. So I mean relationships, connections with people, just control over emotions, things that we think that maybe, if we haven't experienced the traumas that these youth have experienced, we might take that piece for granted. We might not understand that that's something that would be a reaction for them. So how does it show up? It can show up in so many different ways. I mean, we can really think about those adaptations of how they've survived through those traumas in their past and how it's now enacted in their real lives. Meaning they can shut down. There can be lots of rapprochement, which means kind of that push-pull. Relationships are not safe, so they tend to be really guarded, and they don't want to welcome people. They want to welcome the very thing they're fighting for, they're fighting against. They want it, they don't know how to navigate it. So when it gets too close and it gets too scary, they're going to push away from it. So we might find that. We might find displaced emotions. We might find displaced anger. So it doesn't always have to be defiance. It can be risk seeking. It can be, so there's so many different things. But in the relationship with the mentor, it might show up as a lot of confusion for the mentor, because they might not understand what I'm going to say mentee, what the youth is experiencing. So
That's so interesting. The concept of exactly what they're fighting for, they're actually pushing against. So a mentor
right.
might see it as pulling away or something like that. Is
Right.
that kind of a
Yes.
normal behavior? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the part of it is that it's something that even most likely the youth doesn't understand that they're doing that. And in some ways we can look at it as like self-sabotage. We can look at it as a survival mechanism. I mean, we can look at it so many different ways, but I think what happens is we tend to take it as a personal reaction to something we said or did, and we're not kind of switching our perspective to understand what they're going through in that moment, right? So, yeah.
That's such a good thing to know. So how about like, would a youth maybe try to like test the relationship to see like, are they going to stay around, or is this, I guess if we're seeing it as perceived threat to safety, are they testing to see if it's actually not going to be safe?
Right. Well, imagine, yes. I mean, the answer to that is absolutely yes. And the hardest part of that is, what does safety look like for somebody? Safety should be embedded at such a young age. I mean, the people that we should be able to lean on for safety, if those systems aren't in place, our world is viewed as relationships or connections are really, really hurtful. And it's hard because there's a lot of reaction to that. So I think of Daniel Siegel talks about, and this might not even be Daniel Siegel's work, but he talks about the river of calm. And on one side is the bank of chaos, and the other one's the bank of rigidity. Think about safety as that river of calm for most of us. But what happens is when people don't have that as an element or a base of safety in their life, they tend to want to bounce off of one bank or the other. Like if they get into that river of calm, like with that mentor, and they're creating that connection, they might need to get over to that bank of chaos and create a little chaos or tension or push pull in that relationship, because they're just not understanding it. They're feeling it. It might be an emotional threat because past relationships that showed up as quote unquote safe to them might have really been very hurtful, and they don't want to experience that again. So they tend to reject before they feel rejected. Right. So, and that's not just foster youth. That can be for a lot of different people, by the way. So, yeah.
That is a great illustration. That makes so much sense to me. Okay, so how would thinking of a youth who has experienced trauma, and while they're going through therapy, how does a mentor support that youth then? Kind of come alongside a youth who's in therapy. Not without overstepping.
Right. And that's a great, okay. That's a great thought of like different roles that we play. And I think part of it, and really something that I want to come across today, is help mentors to understand that their role is so significant in creating a very supportive relationship. And part of it is that in that process, that youth or, that mentee, they might share some very deep things that they've experienced. And that should be really welcomed, because they're feeling that there's an element of connection. If I think always with a mentor, I always want to instill, check in with yourself. How do you feel? Do you feel like this might be more therapy related, or maybe the therapist might benefit from knowing this? That might be where you ask, hey, is this something that you've shared with your therapist, or can I help you share this? And the reality is, if they say no, then I think part of it is holding that space and realizing this is a process of developing trust. And not all kids in therapy can trust their therapist. And I say this openly, I am a therapist. But sometimes what happens is that progressively throughout the time that they have been in foster care, that they've been through a multitude of therapists. So those are relationships that they have to align with as well. And so creating that trust is something that we want to encourage. We want to encourage that they share. We want to make sure that they share that information with that therapist. We want to help them even if they need to. But that doesn't mean necessarily because they're sharing information with you that they actually can trust that they can share it over in this area yet. And so I hope that makes sense.
It's really good insight. I didn't even think of that because we have talked on the Mentor Lab a lot about how a foster youth could have so much transition in their life and so much change. And
Right.
I didn't even think about a therapist or different therapists being a part of that change. So that could be another thing that they've experienced a lot of.
A multitude of therapists in and out. And when you talk about, again, these are elements that are supposed to support a child, right? But we can talk about ruptures in relationships constantly throughout those child's life. How many placements have they been in and out of? How many therapists have they had at each of those different placements? How many therapists have they had, their siblings had, their foster parents or the resource parents? How many have they had? And so it's a constant moving piece where sometimes what happens is it adversely works against therapy in general. And what we have to do, unfortunately, is wait a little bit until they're older or they can experience therapy on their own because of their own desire. They really want to understand their relationships better. They want to understand themselves better. So it's a little challenging. And I know we're talking about transitional age youth. So we're talking about adolescence and young adulthood. And this is really a point in our lives where that's one of the biggest areas of brain development for us as far as individuating and finding ourselves and creating autonomy. And if we don't trust ourselves in all the relationships that we have had in our lives, that's really hard to navigate. So sometimes therapists can be a challenge for them to trust therapy as well. So just so you know. So yeah, but yeah.
Okay, so now thinking of a mentor's opportunity to building trust with this transitional age youth.
Right.
What does emotional safety look like between a mentor and a youth?
So I think one of the things that we want to look at is trust. How do we build safety, emotional safety? We really want to build that through trust. And so what is trust? I always view trust as consistency in actions. If I am consistently showing up for somebody, they can trust that I'm going to show up for them, right? And so I think the biggest thing for us is reliability and consistency is really how we build trust. And it's a process. It's not, we don't just immediately trust somebody, especially if we have had so much lack of trust in our past. So emotional safety is something we want to be able to show up and help youth in their experience of being able to rely on us and for us to be there. But we also want to be able to be that safe place for them to share their experiences. The emotional safety is really important. And I think navigating that is really key to mentors. And so I did have some key points that I think I wanted to bring up about how we can do that and what that might look like. And so yeah, so I think a lot of it is that, when you're a mentor, we come into this for a reason or a purpose. There's something that we wanted to bring, and we might feel like we have a gift we want to share with others. We might want to feel like we're an inspiration to be there for others. And I think that's a really, really key piece for us to understand. And always we want to frame our mindset around that. How am I helping to guide this youth? How am I helping to be this inspiration? But I'm not there to fix things. So if I come in with a mentality or expectation that I'm going to fix this for this youth, I'm going to make this so much better for them, I might be robbing them of the opportunity of building the skill set for themselves. But in addition to that, I might also be feeling like that I need to do this as a means of my own self-expectation. And quite honestly, we really want them to feel like for mentors, we want them to be guiding the youth and feeling like they're being able to provide that support but not fixing the problem for the youth. And so I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but let's think about emotional safety for a second. If I always felt like people were telling me how to feel, how to think, how to do things, or I felt like maybe they were being critical, I would not feel safe in sharing anything. That would not feel emotionally safe to me. Now, if I have somebody that's showing up consistently and I know that they are reliable and they share experiences in a parallel stance, meaning they reflect on themselves and what they're experiencing, not what I am going through or what I need, it's a whole lot different. So I always want to think about, for the mentors, like, where are you coming from? How can you be a good observer of your own emotions? How can you be an observer of the mentee's emotions, like where they're coming, the youth's emotions? And so, in that, how do you show up? How do you share what your experience is instead of asking them what they're going through? And so, what that might look like, let's just think about if you're experiencing something and it might feel like the youth is going through some maybe something emotionally, or something, there's a shift in the day, or in the mood maybe, and that might look like you just taking a step back and observing it, noticing the shift, and in that, what can you say to them? And that might be like, hey, I noticed something different. I noticed like a little tension, and I'm not sure that I understand what's going on. And so if you want to share it with me, please do so. But I just wish that I knew what to say, or how to help in these moments. Right. And so that might just be some ideas.
So what I think is interesting about that is it's sort of, I think it can be unintentional from the mentor, that they might be doing things that might make a youth feel like defensive or shut down. And the mentor might be thinking, oh no, I want to help. I want to get in here. Right. But it's what I love is it sounds like it's really about just being really curious. So you have to be really like attentive, and that's kind of like curiosity over kind of any other agenda. Would you affirm that?
Absolutely. And that's where I'm saying, be a good observer. Be a good observer of how you feel. Most likely, if you feel a little differently about a situation, or you're noticing a shift, that's 100% you. I mean, be curious about yourself. Like, what am I experiencing right now? But what are they experiencing? And I love the thought of just journaling. I mean, taking a step back. But, there's a couple things. Journaling at night can help the mentor just to process what's going on. And if we journal and we understand our intention in being a mentor, and we pivot to that stance, how would we respond in those moments? It might change. We're not just being reactive or emotional or feeling like we have to go in and fix or help. It might be like, oh my gosh, wait, if I want to be an inspiration to this person, how do I explore this with them? Like, what can we be doing differently together? Right. And so that's a really good point. But part of that is really being curious instead of, curious about yourself, curious about the mentor, the mentee.
That's so interesting, and a new perspective that we've had. So I'm thinking about a youth, maybe the way that it shows up is maybe they might shut down or withdraw or kind of become reactive or combative. And so are you saying that's kind of one idea, if that happens, is to say, like, I notice that something's kind of shifting, or how might a mentor react when that kind of behavior shows up?
I think, again, if we're a good observer of our own emotions, but I think the biggest thing is to stay away from you statements. I noticed you did this. And if somebody tells me, like, I noticed you aren't, whatever, you're not happy today. That might feel like they're showing up and they're doing something wrong. And quite honestly, unbeknownst to the mentor, that could be a trauma trigger, meaning that they might equate that with something in their past where if they didn't show up a certain way, they were viewed a certain way. So that can be triggering. And again, it's just such a slight comment that might just feel like very benign. And part of this is we're going to help them to mentor. When those moments happen, that's not the intention in our actions. But again, I think the big thing is if we show up with those I statements like, oh, wow, I noticed that, things feel a little different today. I really wish you know, I wish I knew, I wish I feel a little confused. I wish I knew how to react in this moment or what to say even. And that's human, that's genuine, right? And that again is an element of connection. And then if we pull in the we moving forward, like what can we do moving forward so we know if it's not a good day or if it's, if there's something we want to share, how can we explore it, or how can we feel like it's okay to do that? And that youth might say, I don't know, because really honestly they might not know, or nobody's really opened up to them in that way before. So
Wow, just such tiny little language changes could change everything.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's encouraging and a little convicting. How quickly we can use words without even really realizing that we're using certain language, like you language. Yeah.
Right. And the good thing is, if you take a step back and you even journal to it, think about it, and then go back and talk about it later with that youth away from any point of, conversation, or if they're triggered or if they're upset, talking to them about it later and saying and reflecting on it. Hey, you know what I noticed the other day? I said something and I wasn't sure how it showed up when I said that. Right. And then I'm actually showing them genuinely that I'm reflecting, I'm taking the time and effort to think about the conversation. I'm coming back, I'm modeling that I want to understand this differently. I'm taking the time for that, but I'm modeling for them that they can do that with me, that it's okay for us to react in a moment. We're human. But after that, we can actually be really curious about it and try to understand how we can work on it together. When we're creating that, we're creating that safe environment for us to explore it, right? But we shouldn't do it in the moment of the shutdown, of the overwhelm. If we are in those moments, it's really great. I mean, when you think about how can a mentor help to, in those moments, settle somebody with big emotions or settle somebody that's got the shutdown? What do you do when it becomes really overwhelmingly, intensely quiet and you're realizing this person's shutting down? I want to think about, if I'm experiencing that and I'm feeling that, I might feel anxious as a mentor. Oh my gosh, I've got to do something in this moment. I've got to make this better. I want to make them talk. What would you do to calm your anxiety? And that might be bringing yourself back into the here and now. That might be a grounding technique. So what that might look like in that moment is I might start doing some deep breaths. Wow, I wish that, I feel like I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I think I'm going to take a walk. Do you want to just go walk over? So I'm not going into a conversation. I'm using action. I'm grounding myself. I'm modeling it. It can be even that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique. What are some things that you're seeing in your environment? Pull it in. What are some things that you're hearing, seeing, smelling, anything, all sensory things? But what we want to do probably in those moments is stay away from the conversation. Let's pull it away sometimes and let's process it. If we can journal to it, be that inspiration that we want to be, go back and revisit it. What can we do differently that we can share? How can we help them in those moments? That's that curiosity piece you're talking about.
So practically, you're sitting next to each other and things have kind of escalated. Maybe you just kind of let it be quiet and you check in with yourself. And then would you practically say, point out something about the environment to kind of just get regrounded?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
As practical as the weather or something like that.
Yes, absolutely. It could be anything. Wow, you know what? I noticed I have never seen that. Did you see that over there? Is it kind of a diversion into the here and now? Yes. What we don't want to do is be dismissive. So we want to make sure that we're validating, this is really, I'm having a hard time right now. Or if they are expressive in their emotions or really triggered, it might be validating, wow, this is really tough right now. And that might just be sitting, calming, modeling that breathing. So different experiences, but in those moments, it might be noticing something in the environment, or just where's the mentor feeling like, if they're feeling a little overwhelmed, they might want to just go like, you know what, I think maybe I want to take a walk. Will you come with me and let's just walk for a moment? So I'm putting it on myself. I'm not putting it on them, but in those means, it really helps that youth. We're modeling that. We're helping them. They're guiding them. Hopefully they'll be accessing that too if they're feeling overwhelmed with us. But yeah, those are some great ideas, I think.
That's awesome. That's so good and so practical. Okay, so not that I want to focus too much on the negative, but is there anything else to kind of avoid? Like if you sense that there might have been a trigger, or even just if you feel like as a mentor, you may like unintentionally have broken trust, like what are some things that we can avoid? So you said don't be dismissive. That would be one thing.
Right.
Be careful with our language. Anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I don't want to add pressure on the mentor, but I think in general, when we consider their lid is flipped, we don't want to go in there and try to talk to them and try to, just a lot of times it's sensory laden. It's less is more. So again, it might be modeling that breathing. It might be sitting with them in those moments. We do want to be curious. We want to use those I statements. We want to reflect on our experience. We want to help and guide them. But in those moments, really, honestly, we should be mentoring just how to de-escalate and get ourselves back into the here and now, right? And I think part of that is just going to be more through sensory. So the big thing is we just don't want to talk. We don't want to be like, oh, I get it. No, you don't get it. You haven't been in their shoes. So we don't want to, that's almost dismissive. Like, oh, it's going to be okay. That's dismissive language, because we're really not, we don't know that they're going to, we don't know that we can make this okay. We can't tell them it's okay. We're not in their shoes. So what we want to do is just kind of stay away from too much talk and just kind of reassurance, kind of just like we're saying, reframing it, bringing it back to the here and now. But knowing that we can talk about this later, I think the biggest thing is check in with yourself. If you're feeling anxious in that moment, you might actually be projecting some of your own anxious energy, which might enhance the situation to escalate more. If it's shut down or if it's increased, agitation. So I think the biggest thing is kind of sitting, relaxing, just like I said, pull it into yourself, and yeah.
You know what I'm even thinking about dynamics when I have maybe sought a mentor in my own life and I've shared something and they've given me advice and it's kind of been like, oh, they're just trying to tell me what to do. I've never thought of it that they might be dealing with their own anxiety with what I shared.
Right.
Like they might be just projecting their own anxiety onto me, and it's just kind of giving me a new, hearing you share that, it's almost giving me some new compassion towards that mentor response to try to fix can actually be their own emotional response. And how good just to kind of calm yourself and check in on yourself before you get to that point. It's almost like the mentor's also getting a little escalated.
Yes. Yeah. In a lot of ways, then in those moments, unbeknownst to ourselves, and this is a typical human reaction. This is not it can be a learned reaction, but we might be trying to resolve our own needs in those moments, like to decrease our own anxiety as a mentor. So we might try to fix it, solve it, make them feel better, and it's not there. We can't do that in that space. And if we want to do that, we need to work on it later when we can reflect on it and share the experience and work on a healing moment. That's actually, when we have ruptures in relationships, that's how we actually build attachment. And it's not that we're going to, in those moments, we're not going to get the fix that we're seeking to decrease our own anxiety. So that's what I'm saying. Be a good observer of your own emotions. Check in. We need to calm ourselves down. What can you do to calm yourself? You're modeling that for your mentor, for your mentee, sorry.
Great. Okay, so I want to move towards kind of now the positive side, what can the mentor do to help kind of build up a new positive identity and things? But are there any other things that you would want to say about kind of triggers for someone who's experienced trauma?
I think a big thing is that they can be it's all sensory laden. It can be, and it can be unbeknownst to them. So meaning you could walk by and they could see something in a storefront or a window, or, they can smell something and that could be triggering and they don't even understand it. And so I think the biggest thing is just be a good observer. And if there is a shift, the more that you understand it or see it and recognize it and share that, like, oh, I was just wondering, is everything, I just noticed a little shift here and how I feel a little stressed or a little tension. I'm just wondering if we're doing okay. And so, and again, are we doing okay? But the part of that is just, they can happen so often. And so they can be part of their presence. And quite honestly, if we're living in a survival mode, we can be very hypervigilant and we can be searching for triggers, even though we don't want them. So again, because we're fighting against, we're trying to actually protect ourselves. So it can feel a little overwhelming sometimes, or that we don't notice it. And that's not your role. But if you do, it's great to see how you can feel in those moments and what you guys can do together to connect. It's creating awareness for them too, in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah. I'm so encouraged. That's so helpful. And I love that. Okay, so how can mentors help rebuild like a positive identity after trauma for a youth?
I think the biggest thing is be reliable and be consistent. Follow through, share your experiences in a way that you're reflecting, that is building that relationship together. But what you don't want to do is set your expectations, or expectation for the youth, or expectations on yourself as a mentor. That's not, if we're doing that, expectations and promises are the greatest areas for disappointment that we can give ourselves. If we're promising things and we cannot come through, that's not going to help to build that consistency or that reliability in that relationship. And expectations are, that's really tough. If we are setting expectations for our youth, the hard part is they might feel that sense of displaced disappointment. They might feel like they're disappointing others. And if we have an expectation like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to make this child or this youth so much better, I'm setting my bar too high. I think that the reality is we should really focus on creating that relationship in a form of that. I'm there for a mentor, and I'm going to be there for this inspiration in their lives. Right?
Yeah. Okay. So then with that said, what role does encouragement, or I have this strengths-based language, what does that play in then to kind of healing and rebuilding?
So that's a great thing, because encouraging versus enabling. If we are an inspiration to others, we're really encouraging them to find and build their strengths. We're highlighting their strengths, and we want to make sure that we're focusing on the time and effort that they're placing into things. And we want to encourage just a sense of autonomy, small accomplishments. We want them to feel a sense of capability in their world, that they have control in their world, that they're building a sense of safety and control for themselves. And so that is really going to be through absolutely recognizing their strengths, the time and effort that they're placing into things. Just really, that should be a highlight of any mentor, to really focus on that on a regular basis.
So is there any language difference between like encouragement versus like expectations, where you might be maybe even inappropriately setting expectations on them? Is it different? Yeah, you know what I'm asking?
Yeah, I guess in a lot of ways, like the expectation might be your expectation. And I think the big part might be encouraging, might be like the language in that might be like, what is it that you want to achieve out of this? What would that make you feel like if we got to this place? What can I do to work with you to help you with that? What can we set up together so that, I'm helping you to get to this goal or whatever. But if I'm coming in with, okay, we need to get this done by this time, now I've just instilled an expectation. And I don't even know if that aligns with their expectations. I'm just coming in, and I consider that more of like a prescriptive relationship more than a developmental relationship. I want to develop the relationship with them at their own space, at their own speed, at their own pace, and their own capabilities, right? Of I want to meet them where they're at. I don't want to set my bar out there. This is what we need to do. This is when we should be doing it. Then that's my expectation that I'm placing on it.
Yeah. What an interesting language shift, prescriptive versus developmental. Like,
yeah,
that's a good word, I think, when describing that relationship.
And I honestly don't even know where, that's kind of always been on the, I'm sure I picked it up from somebody's theory. I don't even know. I'm sorry, I can't quote anybody, but it is really interesting when we think about mentors. We kind of come in with a prescribed mentality, like we have to do this, we're going to have to do this. So that's prescribed. But developmentally, that might not be where this youth is. That might not even be their goals. And so I think part of it is we really have to align with what they need. I know that there's going to be society prescribed things like getting a job, educational requirements, but under that roof, what are some of the developmental approaches that we can take with them that can encourage them to get to that place, especially if it's like education, and this is a youth that has never done well in education and educational system. So that's a challenge to feel like they're going to be smart enough or successful enough. So what's some ways that we can align with them to get them to the goal? And those small accomplishments, the time and effort placed there, those are huge. Those are the strengths that we need to be focusing on, their self-determination to get themselves to a better place and encouraging it. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you use we language, you're kind of like, we're both growing. This isn't just me making sure you grow. It's like we're going somewhere together. And that's just really beautiful. And it also means, as a mentor, what a great experience that we get to have as well.
Right. Absolutely. Exactly. And it's a process. It's a journey. I think that's another prescribed, maybe mentor idea. I'm going to make this so much better for this youth. And we're almost at that. We almost envision, kind of the future tripping. We're almost envisioning that finish line. It's a process. It's a journey, and we've got to notice the small little shifts that are happening. The connection. We need to recognize those because we're helping them, the youth, to see that if we're seeing it, right? And that's kind of that's where we become like that external regulating factor and helping them in areas that they don't see that they're dysregulated or that they're not feeling confident in.
Yeah. So, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So what's a mindset shift that you wish every mentor kind of understood when working with a trauma-impacted youth?
I think we've set the stage for it. I think part of this is that I think you really need to analyze what your intentions are. What are you bringing? What are your own strengths and qualities that you're bringing to this relationship? And part of that is we want to decrease kind of the fix-it mode, right? We're not there to fix or solve or process their traumas. We're there for that purpose. What is that purpose? I want to be this good, inspirational mentor. I want to help guide this person and provide stability and encourage them so that they're capable. Okay, if that's what I want to do, then that has to be the perspective shift. I'm not there to fix. I'm not their therapist. I'm not there to fix the problem. I'm just there for this reason. And I need to keep putting those lenses on so I can see how to come from that place instead of the perspective of trying to make everything better immediately.
That's
a fix it mode.
Yeah, that's so helpful. That's so good. Okay, well, thank you so much for everything that you shared today. Is there any last encouragements you would have for a mentor? Anything you feel like we didn't get to say, or just any last encouragements for a mentor dealing with someone who's a trauma-impacted youth?
I always have, this one I did find. I always had, even when I was a parent partner myself, there was always kind of a saying, and I didn't really know where it came from. And it was from the Center of the Developing Child from Harvard University. And they've done research, but they have found that the most common protective factor for children and teens who develop the capacity to overcome serious hardship is having at least one stable and committed relationship with them. So it could be a supportive parent, caregiver, other adults. So this is what you're providing. This is really, you can be that one person to impact the change that they have, or to provide that guidance in their lives. So just that one person, that's you, the mentor. So yes.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you so much for being on here and sharing all of that. That's so helpful.
Thank you.
If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if these conversations resonate with you, leave a comment or a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts and what questions you'd like us to explore in future episodes. Lastly, help us grow our community and share this episode with your family, your friends, your life groups, and more. We're grateful you've chosen to be a part of this mission, one rooted in hope, compassion, and the belief that every young person deserves to be seen, supported, and loved. Thank you for listening, thank you for caring, and thank you for stepping into this journey with us.